up, we go to Saturday. The rest of the games are all on Saturday. Big 12 championship game, Kansas State, TCU. We've got TCU just 2.5-point favorites here in this game, 62 being the total in this game. This game taking place at Jerry World, AT&T Stadium, Arlington, Texas, home of the Dallas Cowboys. That's usually where the Big 12 championship game is every year. Isn't it curious that TCU, undefeated, and they're only laying 2.5 here? Now, it is a neutral field. It's obviously not a true home game here for TCU, but obviously this game's in their own state. You would think that still TCU faithful will turn out in droves for this game, for an undefeated team with a chance to be in the college football playoff and complete an undefeated season. Obviously, there's going to be some great turnout and support, you would think, for the Horned Frogs here in this game. But I think it's important to, before we even get into the actual matchup with these two teams, I think it's important to look back at the context of the regular season meeting between these two teams earlier this year, where Kansas State jumped on TCU early in that game, all over TCU. It couldn't have been a better start for the Kansas State Wildcats in that game. What were they up at one time? 28-10 in the second quarter against TCU. And then all of a sudden, quarterbacks started dropping like flies for this Kansas State team. Adrian Martinez got hurt, and of course, he's been injured pretty much ever since. Will Howard comes in at quarterback. He actually plays well, moves the team. You know, they're still pretty much ahead well into the third quarter. He gets then injured. They lost both of their starting quarterbacks, their top two quarterbacks in that game. And then they had to finish the game with Jake Rubley, and he was not very good at all. So I remember that game very well. And that's when everything just fell apart for TCU. They lost the lead. They ended up losing the point spread cover as well. They were getting, 3.5, 4 in that game. They ended up losing 38-28 to TCU in that game. The quarterback injuries changed everything. So this, to me, I mean, Kansas State can compete, in my opinion, here. Kansas State could even win here, in my opinion. Look, TCU played, I can't figure out if that was just Iowa State was absolutely pathetic or TCU was that good. I think it was a combination of both on Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to say both.
Yeah. I mean, they made a lot of mistakes. I mean, you can't turn the ball over against that team and that offense and Duggan and Kendre Miller and all that weapons they have. And Iowa State did just that. They did the worst thing you can do when you play a team like the Horned Frogs, and they paid the price for it. You know, you look at Kansas State, they're a machine right now. I mean, the way they finished the season with 3 straight convincing victories, 31-3, they pummeled Baylor, 48-31 over West Virginia. Pretty much wire to wire in control over Kansas, 47-27. Now, TCU obviously step up from all 3 of those opponents, no question. And they're coming off just a destruction of 62-14 over Iowa State. But keep in mind, only plus 39 in total yards in that game for TCU. Hunter Deckers with an interception. They put in Rocco Becht. He threw an interception. They had one lost fumble as well. And that ended up being the difference. I mean, what was it, -3 in turnover margin? You know, you cannot fuel TCU's offense with turnovers. You can't. Iowa State did. So this is imperative. If I'm Chris Kleiman, I say, fucking secure the football. You know, take care of the football. Do not turn it over if you're going to give yourself a chance here against TCU. But I don't think this is the slam dunk that people seem to think early in the week, though. TCU only -2.5. Kansas State was beating them up in the trenches early in that game. And I can't get that out of my mind. And now you're in this last step away from this completing this perfect regular season. This is when you feel the pressure at its utmost, potentially. I wouldn't be shocked either way in this game. I think it's a high variance game. I could see a lot of different outcomes. I could see TCU winning a close game. I could see TCU winning comfortably. And I could also see Kansas State winning this game. I really could, because they definitely took it to TCU before they started having their quarterbacks dropping out like flies due to injury in that game. So this is one game I don't really know if I'll be betting it from a side perspective, but it just feels like it's a little buyer beware, at least in my opinion here, with TCU only laying 2.5. And keep in mind the last 3 games, you look at the statistical matchup here, Kansas State offense, 6.1 yards per play, more than TCU's offense the last 3 games. The Kansas State defense, only 0.1 yards per play worse than TCU in the last 3 games. Statistically, these teams look freaking even. And in fact, K-State's offensive numbers, yards per play, have been better the last 3 games compared to TCU's. I think this is not a slam dunk that people seem to think. That's what I hear. How can TCU only be laying 2.5? I think there's a reason for that. Kansas State was taking it to them early in that game than the regular season meeting, and then it completely changed when Martinez got hurt, Howard got hurt, and that's when things got away from them. I think this is a tough game for TCU, and it'll play out that way on Saturday afternoon. What do you think here, Conor Mack, Big 12 championship?
Yeah, I mean, we all remember that game at TCU, taking it to them so early in there. I mean, I think that's just in the line here. On the neutral field, how close that game was, or, Kansas State leading for so long. And you mentioned all the quarterbacks that went down. Then TCU has done what they've done, take care of business in the fourth quarter. I think if you like Kansas State, maybe look early. And this is a game to bet live, like you mentioned. Get something gap. It's under 3. It could be tricky. TCU's down has been money at the end in 1 games. I think Kansas State, you mentioned, their defense at times was impressive. In the last few weeks, though, Kansas still put 27 on them. I mean, the week before that, West Virginia hung 31. They won comfortably. So they think there's points here. That first meeting, 38-28, I was right at this total. This one's tough for me. Everything you mentioned, I always talk about everything when everything's on the line to go undefeated, go to the playoffs. Everything, tightens up. I don't want to use any bad language, but you know what I mean.
This is the last step of the staircase, the last bit of the mountain you have to climb if you're TCU. And this is the game where you feel it. That pressure ratchets up even more. Yep.
K-State's got to be light. They got to be like, fuck, F these guys. We were beating them, like you mentioned. And then our third string quarterback, blah, blah, blah. So they got to come in loose here. I think this is a good football game. So that's it. I have nothing right now on it.